Welcome to Virtue and Victory, a practical guide of Stoic virtues to triumph in chess and life.
You are sitting across from a chessboard facing an opponent, and the clock is ticking every second and every moment. Every second and every move you make is one step closer to the end of the game. This isn't just chess, it's life, and it's a reminder of one of Stoicism's most profound principles, Memento Mori, or remember you will die.
Adam, as a Stoic, I think this is one of the foundational principles of Stoicism, and I think it's wonderful that we get a chance to talk about this today. What's your take on Memento Mori?
I really like how philosophers and Stoics have summarized Memento Mori in prior writings, in prior lessons, and prior studies. Seneca, for example, Doug, talks about preparing your mind as if we'd come to the very end of life. Postpone nothing. Let us balance life's books each day. The one who puts the finishing touches on their life each day is never short of time. That was Seneca. In Meditations, Marcus Aurelius talked about, and really remember, he wrote to himself. Meditations, I don't know that he ever planned on millions and millions of people reading his own personal journal, but what he did write to himself as a reminder is, you could leave life right now. I'd say he'd probably said, comma, Marcus, you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. He kept at the forefront of his thoughts the fact that this might be it, not as a gruesome way of reminding himself he's going to die, but as motivation, probably. Epictetus would regularly talk to his students and ask them to ponder on how death could happen. It's something that we've practiced as negative visualization, and then back your life up from that moment where you die as a reminder, right, that you must die. And the hope is that it will fetter a profound awareness of life's transience, which should then help us prioritize what truly matters. Right? If death is the ultimate destination, then it's probably not what actually matters. What matters is probably the journey and what we need to accomplish before we lose on time. I know we're going to come back and talk about that here in a few minutes. But those are kind of my initial thoughts on Memento Mori, and reminding myself regularly that we must die. And it's to really inspire, to motivate, and to clarify what my intentions are, what my focuses are, what my goals are in life, and reminding myself that the journey is what actually matters, not the destination.
The first understanding through readings I took that is to humble yourself, right? Because the destination is preset. We all as humans will come to the destination of death. You mentioned finishing touches. I kind of want to expand on that, like the meaning of what does finishing touches mean each day?
That's a powerful question. I think it all depends on everyone's individual journey. What I like to do is segment out some of those finishing touches. Did I help others? Did I make somebody else's life better? Did I help somebody through a trying moment? Did I give somebody good counsel? Did I give of myself? Was I selfless? Did I practice the virtues? Right? Was I fair? Was I just? Was I courageous? Did I use wisdom? Did I use moderation? What of those items do I need to reflect on so that tomorrow, if I wake, should I do better? Right? So finishing touches on each day, I think, should be segmented into how you're helping others, how you're helping yourself, how you're helping the cosmopolis that you live in, and reflect regularly on, are you giving of yourself, or are you being selfish? Are you being just, or are you being unjust? Are you being wise, or are you not being wise? So on and so forth, right? So living in harmony with nature, the natural order of things, remembering that naturally we should have some rhythm to life. We should have some habits in life, hopefully good ones. Are we prioritizing our life in a way that good moral character is the most important thing? Are we reacting to the outward influences in life, or are we focused on inward improvement of our thoughts, of our judgments, of our actions? So I think that's
Yeah.
maybe a few different ways to think about it, but I think we could talk about that. That could be a whole episode in and of itself.
Yeah, there's a lot there, but I love how you brought it back to essentially aligning to your values and living a virtuous life, right? I think when I think about it that way, it reminds me that life is finite, time is finite. It's not an unlimited thing. There will be an end piece in that. And don't squander that time. Don't be afraid of death. Reflect on it, know that it's coming, be at peace with it, which I think can be empowering instead of living in fear of death. But also don't squander the time. And you also mentioned it's about the journey. And I've shared with you, right? I was very much a destination guy. Like if we say, hey, we're going to a restaurant at 5 o'clock, I'm going to be at the restaurant at 4:50. She will be there at 5:05, and we just happen to get to places on time because we meet in the middle on these things. But she's like, "Why? You set the reservation. Why is it breakneck that we must get there at 5? Why stress yourself out to get there? Let's enjoy the time together. We don't get time together like this. Let's drive. Let's drive the parkway. We will get to the restaurant. And what's the worst thing that will happen? They give our seat to somebody else. Let the venture begin. We'll go to another restaurant. Like it's not the end of the world. And so I think there's a lot of reminders embedded.
Let me drill into that for a minute.
Yeah.
And in my view, simply, it's where we place the priority.
Mm-hmm.
Is the priority meeting at the restaurant at the time that was designed, or is the priority sharing a meal together, or is the
That's right.
priority nourishing our bodies, or is the priority spending time together?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so we're so focused on the destination being the reservation at 5, where what's really actually important is spending quality time together.
That's right.
Right? So it's a mindset shift, right? And so to your point, if you miss the reservation and they give it away, that wasn't really what was important anyway. What was important was spending time together. What was important was nourishing your souls by spending time together, by nourishing your bodies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Powerful. Think about it.
I think that's where the conflict comes in, right? We had two different value sets, but if I reflect on it, yeah, it's not about the 5 o'clock reservation. Um, I think there's a level of control with that. And I know this sometimes it sounds morbid when we talk about these things, but what happens if the restaurant is not there at 5 o'clock? Does that mean I still don't get to spend time with my wife, or does that mean I still don't get to eat? Because I've had that happen too, right? I've not done the proper preparations. I don't know if you've done it or any of our listeners done it, where we're like, I'm going to this restaurant. I look it up on the internet. Maybe the internet posting hasn't been updated, but I get there and it's out of business. It's closed. It doesn't exist. So there's no way I'm eating there.
Yeah. Yeah. And if the restaurant wasn't taking reservations, did it really
Yeah,
matter what time you showed up anyway? I
that's
mean,
right.
again, where are you placing your priority, right? So back to Memento Mori, right? Let's dig in just a little deeper. I'll tell a quick story. So the Romans, right? The ancient Romans, call it 200 BCE, 100 BCE, go into the Common Era as well. Most powerful um, community in the history of the world for a long, long time, right? And one of the things that the Romans prioritized was strength and courage. And a way that was illustrated was by the amount of respect and adoration that they had for their military generals that would go to war, leave their families, leave the comfort of their palaces, go to war and win these battles. And these triumphant generals would come back to the cities, huge, massive cities, where they would be paraded through the community, where there would be thousands upon hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of people roaring their names during the return procession from war to celebrate the battle because of the high priority they put on strength, on courage, on being a general and protecting what the Romans, or we could talk about many other civilizations, um, held as the highest priority, which was their safety and their freedom, for all intents and purposes, right? And so these military leaders would be paraded through these communities, and as these military heroes, these war heroes, were paraded through the streets, it was very, very common to have slaves whose sole responsibility for the entirety of the parade of their only responsibility was to whisper in the general's ear continuously, "Memento Mori." Remember, you are mortal. Remember, you must die. You remember, you will die. Does this really matter in the big scheme of things? Or is this just another piece of the journey to your death? And it was a way to remind them to stay humble. I think in another way, maybe it was a way to help them enjoy the moment while they were staying humble. The best leaders we know are the most humble people we know typically, right? And those are the folks we want to follow. So when we step back and look at Memento Mori, whatever civilization we're talking about, there's always been a way for leaders, for successful individuals, for those we look up to remind themselves that what matters is the journey, that all of this will be over someday. Remind yourself of that. That way you can take note of an account of your day in a meaningful way to ensure that you are living life to its fullest, you are enjoying it, you are helping others, and you are remembering what's really actually important, which is being a person of good moral character and prioritizing your soul in the process of accomplishing the worldly things we all set out to accomplish.
Yeah, those reminders are really important. I think when we begin a journey, I think especially when we're in the middle of the journey, um, remembering why we started, remembering the end with the end in mind, helps us stay on the right path because it's very easy to get knocked off. I think when you get to the end, it's already too late, right? So I think
Mhm.
something that's really impacted me is when I learned about this. There was interviews that was done with hospice patients, and they asked them about their values, what they wish, any regrets, and sort of. And they overwhelmingly, folks in hospice would say they wish they spent more time with friends and family, right? That they spent a large part of their life doing things that at the end they realized didn't matter as much. And it's not easy. It's hard when you're in the moment or chasing a certain thing. So you need those reminders. You need to reflect about it. You need to think about it so you can stay aligned. And so
Mhm.
I think that's an amazing story that you shared where these generals, these leaders, which could be put on a pedestal, they found a way to keep themselves grounded, which is having somebody whisper in their ear, man, you're not all that. When you die, we're all going to end up the same. And of course, we use a lot of teachings from Marcus Aurelius, which was great at that, right? We know his thoughts from his essentially his journal, which became published because that's something he tried to ground himself a lot. He was an emperor, right, of the largest empire at the time, and he seemed to be a pretty grounded individual. And
Mhm.
this is everybody has this in life. I think we always talk about, and we had the opening scene with a chess game, it's finite. Life is finite. Anything that we engage in as humans is finite. And so what we do, it matters. It matters more because it's finite. We will get to the end. We just mentioned accepting that the key is there is so what you do have with that finite resource of living, are you living with values and are you living with intention? Whenever I think about these things, I think about a few key milestones in anybody's journey. The first milestone is always how to start. I see a lot of folks sometimes give up before we start. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. It's one of my favorite things. It's saying that you'll never get to the destination if you never start. However, in Memento Mori, it's possible that you never begin and it ends, right? If we
Mhm.
do nothing, we still will end up at the destination. So the question truly is, what was that journey in between? And what I encourage everybody to think about is short term, middle term, long term goals, knowing that something will happen regardless of you willing to participate or not.
Yeah, I like to ask myself, what do you need to accomplish? You hear a lot of people asking, what do you want to accomplish? What are you trying to accomplish? What do you want to be when you're older? What do you want to do with your life? I always ask myself, Adam, what do you need to accomplish? Right? When we think about the cosmopolis, which we talk about often, there's a community out there that we all live in, that we all participate in. That's a that's a huge responsibility if you think about it the right way. And for me, the things that I spend my time doing, I again, I'll go back to prioritization of the values and the virtues of Stoicism, living in harmony with nature and the natural order of things. We're all part of a cybernetic system where we're all living on Earth, which is, one single living organism that encompasses all things, right? We're all in this together. What do I need to accomplish to make sure that I'm contributing to that organism, that living organism that we're all a part of? But you're right, living intentionally, treating each day as a deliberate move in your life's game, thinking when you wake up in the morning or when you go to bed at night, what three things am I going to accomplish? What are three things I'm going to look to accomplish today, tomorrow,
Mm-hmm.
the next day, this week, right? And when I step back and say, here's what my focus is, here's why I'm working on these things, here's what I'm not working on. And sometimes it's as important to note what we're not focused on, what we're not going to worry about, what we're not working on that day, that week, that month, as it is writing down what we are working on, right? When I consult folks that are starting new businesses or that have had businesses for a while that are looking to shift their business or transform their business, I have them write down two things as part of the overall foundational business planning that we do. Two of those very powerful things is, what do we do and what do we not do? And I think we can do that and account for that in life each day of, here's what I'm focused on. Here's what we're going to do. Here's what we're going to be the very, very best at. And here's what we're not going to worry about. Here are the things we're just not going to spend any time worrying about.
Yeah. No, that's very powerful because I 100% agree with you. I think in life, because it's finite, we need to make value judgments on what's important. You can't do everything, and I think you mentioned about being a citizen of a community. Are we being good stewards or being good citizens? That's the legacy you leave behind. So that's how I would characterize those two things based on your value judgments. Um, we often talk about business and chess because there's a lot of parallels, and we can kind of borrow from each of those things. In business, I think to me the number one killer, if you're working on a project, is scope creep. So you need to identify your scope and what's out of bounds early on, knowing that you have finite resources and time to attack a certain problem. So that priority is super important. I do think it's a great question that maybe not enough people ask is, what do I not do? It's sometimes a harder question because, again, when you have finite resources, and that's exactly what this conversation is about, you have to make a choice.
Yeah.
And I mentioned like the number one choice is getting started. So that was the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. But now you're in it, right? And you make the choose to make a step. And with every step, there's another choice. Even if you choose not to take a step. That's a choice as well. I think where the second part that people get caught up in is, what if things don't go as planned or as I wanted? You mentioned the difference between need and want. That's a very important distinction, because maybe you didn't get what you wanted, but maybe you got exactly what you needed, right? I think we talk about the fates and learning opportunities. So maybe I reflected and I set goals for the day, but something happened that I didn't anticipate or just didn't go the way that I wanted. There's Stoic principles involved in that as well. I think the way that I like to approach it in a structured way is, when I reflect, I ask, what did I expect to happen? And this is, by the way, after action review set up by the US military for missions. I think it's very effective. What actually happened? Was there a difference between my expectations and what happened? Why? And this is the most important question. This is a question I've been asking for a while, and it's really distinguished, I would say, success from failure, because a lot of times what we may think is failure immediately might have been something that set us up for longer term success. And the question is, what did I learn? And then how do I apply what I learned to any future actions? Like you said, the next day, we maybe something, it was a hard day, it was a challenging day. Did I learn something, and can I apply that learning to the next day? And truly, I like to say this out loud, because I do think there's misconceptions of Stoicism, where people might just think Stoicism is void of emotion or caring. Stoicism is a focus on what you can control. And if I learn something, I can control what I do with that.
In so many ways, choosing how to respond versus reacting, right? People, I think, see a lot of emotion because they see reactions a lot of times. A Stoic would tell you that we might not seem emotional, or they might not seem emotional, but calm in crisis is also an emotion. Tranquility is an emotion, is what I would maybe articulate if somebody were to say that or to ask me a question. And that is a choice to realize that there's so many things we cannot control. Therefore, we focus on controlling what we can, which is our thoughts, our judgments, our actions, our desires, which then allows us to choose how to respond to things that are happening versus react emotionally to things that are happening. Right?
As I've grown in my journey, and myself and other people, where if something doesn't work the way that you want, there's a lot of frustration, and sometimes people just give up on the situation. And I think in chess, I've learned to adapt my gameplay. And I know you are a very aggressive chess player as well. I'm an attacking, aggressive person. I think if you could apply to business, you can be very aggressive, but you also need to understand the things you can't control and have contingency plans for that. The quote that comes to mind with that is actually a Bruce Lee quote. He says, "Be like water," and then you kind of explore that a little bit more. When it comes to long term, between the rock and water, it's not the rock that wins. It's water, because it's consistent. It will permeate the rock. The rock will wear away. The rock is something that is rigid, does not change. And so, to the point that you were saying, to when I think about chess, with keeping with the end in mind, I kind of know I'm not at the level that I want to be, so I continue to work at it every day. But I have plans. I kind of know where I want to get into, and that starts with my opening move. So, as white, I'm an E4 player. As black, it's C5 or King's Indian or Sicilian. And the reason I choose those is because of the flexibility, is that they
Yeah.
can transpose to other positions, because we have to start. I can't. If we get into a chess game, I can't just say I give up. I mean, I could, but that's no fun. I have to make my move, and I can't control what you're gonna move, but I allow myself some flexibility, knowing that every time that we do make a move, it's gonna get us closer to the end game, and there's a particular end game that I want to get to. I think In business, I mentioned scope creep. I would say is a number one killer for projects. It's because you lose sight of what the problem that you're trying to solve. We get into this situation where you're trying to boil the ocean, but you have to be very, very intentional. I think the same thing with life. I ask myself, what are the top three things I need to accomplish today? And I usually have them in focus areas, right? Am I doing something for my health? Am I doing something for my family? Am I doing something for, you can say, financial betterment or business betterment in those things? And at the end of the day, even if something happened that I couldn't control or something I didn't like or that was challenging, was it successful? And we mentioned this before. When you think about the end in sight, is at the end of the day, are you at peace
Yeah.
as an individual?
You said, I'm going to go back to your chess analogy
Yeah.
for a moment. You said you like to set your first pieces, you start your day, start your
Yeah.
chess game in order to have as much flexibility as possible, right?
Yep.
You live life like you play chess, and that's so common, right? You're looking for flexibility. You're looking for, I mean, I'm not here to dissect you philosophically or otherwise, Doug, but there's some parallels to how you live your life and how you play your chess game. And that's why we like to bring them together, because it's an illustrated way. So many of us are looking for flexibility in life. So many of us are looking for options, because what
Yep.
we want is happiness and joy.
Yep.
So this week I was filling out a piece of paper for my daughter, my kindergarten age daughter,
Mm-hmm.
where the teachers were asking a survey about how are things going? Do you see improvement? What else would you like us to focus on with your child as they're in school? And I'm going to venture a guess and say that I probably filled that paper out much differently than what the teachers were
Mm.
maybe thinking, and B, probably a lot different than most parents.
Yeah.
So there was a question on there, something to the effect of, what else would you like us to focus on with your child as the year progresses? And my answer was very short and sweet. Focus on allowing her to have fun, helping her learn how to make friends and enjoy life.
Mm-hmm.
I bet most parents probably focused on learn how to better sound out vowels, count to 100, on those school things, right? But for me, I always keep very present at the top of my mind the joy that is life and the journey of life. When you have healthy relationships, when you have flexibility, when you live intentionally, when you treat
Yeah.
each day as a deliberate move in your life's game, right? Focusing on what we can control and let going of everything else. Choosing to respond versus react, looking for that flexibility. That's why I build these businesses that I build. That's why I help other people build businesses, because it's true flexibility of how to live your life is when you're able to decide how you spend your time.
Mm-hmm.
Because time nobody can buy and nobody
Yeah.
can get back. It's the thing that is constantly moving, right? And you talk about being like water. One of my favorite passages, and there's a book out there that his daughter wrote that articulated more fully some of the philosophies that he lived by. And one of the quotes that I love to say regularly is there is power in pliability, right? And that's what it is when it comes to being like water, is being pliable, being flexible. There's a lot of power in that. There's a lot of beauty in that. The power of a vessel, he would have said, is in its emptiness.
Mm-hmm.
And the emptiness, the emptying of your mind, is so that there's not emotion in how you're responding to things. It's the emotion that gets people to react and maybe make a bad decision, right? And so I like where you went about writing down your top three priorities for the week and then assessing if they align with your values. I think those are very clear action steps for our listeners, that we want to provide practical steps for applying Memento Mori in life and business, writing down the three priorities for the day, the week, the month, the year, whatever it is, right? But just being intentional, whether it's three things, whether it's five things, whether it's 10 things, I'd say there's a lot of complexity and simplicity. I say that a lot because it's hard to hold yourself to just three things. The question is, what do you need to accomplish? And do you need to write down more than three things in order to accomplish that? Maybe. Maybe you do. Maybe you don't. But choose the number that works for you. 3, 4, 5, 10, 12, 20, whatever that is. Just be intentional about it.
Yeah, intentionality is important, and I think simplicity is beautiful. We tend to overcomplicate things. I tell people three is a good number. When you approach five, usually the advice I give the folks is it's too much. It may be that you have 50 things, and maybe you have 100 things. In fact, that's where people start to get overwhelmed, right? So I mean, I remember working on a project at work with some folks, and the first thing I asked them to do is I said, I want you to just write a list of everything that you think that are challenges for our team and that we can improve on. And after one day, they came back, they're like, I'm overwhelmed. It's too many things. I was like, I don't care if the list is 1,000 things. It's okay. But what we're going to do is we're going to take the top three. We're going to tackle those. We're going to reassess, and then we'll take the next top three. And so that's another quote, right? Is how do you move a mountain? It's one stone at a time. If you look at the mountain, you're overwhelmed. But if you look at an individual stone, you can do it. That's, I think, where anxiety, stress lead up. And this is going to come across a little bit harsh. I'll start easy, just so people understand the concept. But if in business, what I like to do is, I like puzzles. I really enjoy puzzles. You give me a ball of string that's all tangled, I like it. Because I'm going to find that one piece of the string and I'm going to pull on it and it starts to unravel everything. But I'm going to focus on the one. I'm not going to look at the ball of string. I'm going to try to find where the connection point is. And that's how my approach on different things is. And I see people get overwhelmed. We talked about in our previous episodes about Quitter's Day with New Year's resolutions. It's because something went wrong. We missed a day. And this is where the harshness comes out. It's not meant to be harsh, but I know it sounds a little firm. Is if somebody, I know weight loss is a big thing. If somebody wants to lose weight, it's like, it's okay. It's okay if you did not gain the weight that you have today overnight. You're not going to lose it overnight. So you got to zoom out and take the long approach, whatever it is, or if it's overall health, or if it's even financial wellness, which sometimes is overlooked. We didn't get into debt overnight. We're not going to get out of debt overnight. So you have to look at the long game. And that's what Memento Mori reminds us, is that there is a destination. It's the choices that we make along the way that's going to lead to our legacy, to the success, the light that we turn on for others. So let go of that outcome and focus on what we can control. That's the things that we choose to do in each of the moments. And there's always going to be moments throughout your day, your week, years, in your life. You probably are going to be able to say, these were very pivotal moments. I know when I look back on my timeline, I can call out like this was a moment that was important to shape me as the person I am today and sets me up for the next juncture in the road.
Well, it's all great thoughts, and totally agree with you, Doug. And I think what the common thread here we're pulling on is living intentionally, treating each day as a deliberate move in your life's game or your life's journey, focusing on what we can control, learning to let go of outcomes and focus on our efforts, realizing that we prepare best for the end by enjoying the journey and each moment and each day. Staying flexible, having the flexibility, creating a life that allows us to find the flexibility. And we do that by intentionally planning, by sitting down and documenting what it is we're looking to accomplish. I would encourage our listeners this week to reflect on some decisions that you've made that have you where you are right now, whether you're happy, whether you're sad, whether you're fulfilled, whether you're unfulfilled. I'd encourage the listeners to sit back and reflect on what are the primary decisions and things that have happened in life that have you where you are currently. And humbly sit back and write down those reflections. And then make a decision. Are you happy? Are you where you are? Is your journey over? Are you good? If not, start writing down your plan, three things that you would like to still accomplish. My hope is, as a practicing Stoic, that prioritizing your soul by ensuring you're a person of good moral character is near the top of that list. And one way I've found to do that is by helping others selflessly as often as I can. I want the audience, I want the listeners, I want our friends to sit back and reflect on those things, write them down, and remember that, as Memento Mori would have us do, we all will die. Therefore, what matters is how we live. And the thought that I would leave the listeners with is a quote from Epictetus, which is, "How long are you going to wait before you demand the best for yourself?" My hope is, as we're working on this year, we don't wait any longer. Because as we become better, we will influence those around us to become better. And as we influence those around us to become better, those around them will become better. And that's how we make the world a better place.
I love it. Can't think of a better way to end than with that quote. Thank you, Adam, for today's conversation, and thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. Thanks, everyone. Hope everyone has a great, intentional, wonderful, enjoyable week.